At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order of the 5th Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting on March the 20th, 2025 at 5:33.
All right.
So it is spring break, so we have a few people that are out having a really good time. So thank you all for coming. And you know, we'll be able to make good decisions, but if we need them later, we can certainly ask them to help us out. First off, we're going to start with John Chapman, Long Range Planning Manager, will provide an overview of tonight's meeting. John will also introduce Jay Rinkins, Principal in Charge with the consulting team at MIG.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Real quick before we start, we are going to actively have this slide in all of our presentations for both form-based code and comprehensive plan. This is This is to ensure that when we're engaging with community members or our committee members, that we just want to be vocal about these two very large projects happening and the differences between the two of them. Form-based code is a potential zoning change that could impact the downtown area, whereas the comprehensive plan is an entire city focus plan that will drive policy decisions over the next 20 years. It will not impact any zoning of anyone's property as we move through this process. So we'll keep this slide active. It's something that we learned from Dallas. If y'all may recall, Dallas had their Forward Dallas plan going and a large zoning discussion happening at the same time. And as we learned, that kind of created some confusion amongst community members. So this is part of that from what we learned, and so we just want to be vocal about both of these projects and kind of put them in the same room together for a minute and then dive into what we're here to talk about, which is the comprehensive plan. So we have a pretty hefty agenda tonight, led by the MIG team. Last time y'all heard from them was in November. They've been doing a lot of work, provided y'all the existing conditions report. We're going to be diving into that, as well as the growth insight summary, which you have at your place. We'll also start talking about place types, and then we'll have a report out, and then that's pretty much the meeting, and then we'll talk about some future meeting dates as well. So I'm going to hand it over to the MIG team, led by Jay Rankins now.
So hi, Jay Rankins with MIG. I think everyone met me, at the very first steering committee meeting. Right, feedback? We're really excited to be back with you all. We know you've done a lot of work in the meantime. Today, as John said, is an important meeting. We're sort of, midstream as far as getting vision and goal input from the community, and we want to make sure we hear from you all in that regard as well. And then we're going to do some sort of upfront work around place types as well. So there's a city staff. Hi, city staff. But I'm joined tonight by Ellie Schaefer, our project manager with MIG, Alicia Davis with NAO Partners, who is helping us with the economics, fiscal impacts of the work, and Robin Williams, who's our outreach lead. So I'm going to turn over to them for the bulk of our presentation, and then I'll help facilitate our exercises.
All right. Well, since you guys have already met several times, I think we can probably skip over introductions, and you have some handy name tags as well. So again, I'm Ellie Schaefer with MIG. Nice to see you all again. Last time I was virtual, if you remember, so it's nice to be here in person. Quick reminder on our timeline. This is going to be a 2-year process to update the comprehensive plan, Innovate Arlington, as it's now known. As John mentioned, we've been hard at work behind the scenes, working on some initial deliverables and community and stakeholder engagement. Coming out of this in Q2, we're going to start going into plan development, doing a lot more of the work that we're going to touch on here shortly, and then we're hoping to wrap up with review and adoption by the end of next year.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to speak to some of the engagement that we've done so far. As you know, you're in the, 4th or 5th meeting. We've had 4 steering committee meetings up to date. And we have been very busy with the stakeholder interviews. Those have gone very well with agency leads from TxDOT to the International Corridor, P&Z chair, downtown, we've had developers and so forth, gone very well. And then we've had our first 2 focus groups. The first one being on arts, culture, and entertainment, which was very fun. And then we had another one basically on quality of life and community services that went really well. And in April, we have upcoming, we will do transportation, mobility, and we will also do economic development. So we're getting those scheduled, and those will go very well, we're expecting. And then next phase, we'll do our final 2 focus groups, which is community/participation and inclusion, and we'll finish up with a housing focus group. Next. Great. And then, of course, we've had the community questionnaire that is kicked off. That'll go from March through April, and we've gotten some, maybe almost 200 or more responses so far, but we'd love to encourage you, and the comms team will be pushing that out and inspiring people to take that. We also have 5 more workshops. We had the first one on the 18th that went very well at the library, and so we hope to have a very good turnout at the 3 workshops this week. Please feel free to encourage your friends and colleagues to attend these workshops and let us know their feedback. And then we will be doing in April our first 2 pop-ups. We're expecting to do it at one of the Asian marketplaces, and then we'd like to do one at UTA before school gets out. So we're very excited about that in April. And then I think Ellie will tell us a little bit about what we heard at the first meeting.
I have a quick question. Is that all right? The focus groups in April, are those by invitation, or so you're going to seek out specific groups of those by invitation only?
Yeah, John actually put the invite, with help from other city staff, and I don't know, John, if you want to speak to that, but.
Yes, those have been invitation. I think Arbor is looking at we're looking at Arbor for the housing, if you're interested in that.
Well, certainly, but yeah, I just wondered if people can request to be a focus group, or if you're extending invitations.
If someone's requesting, we can have a conversation with them as to what that focus group would look like, the intention of the focus group, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with that formal invitation.
Thank you.
And there will be focus, it's not just this period of the process. We're going to be doing focus groups throughout. So there are additional opportunities even if someone doesn't participate in this first round. So yeah, if it's you or someone you know, let us know, and we'll try to incorporate you in future focus groups.
Yes, Mr. Siddiqui. There we go.
How large is the focus group?
How large are the focus groups? Anywhere between like 3 and, what do we have, 6 maybe?
I think we try to
Larger.
get anywhere between 8 and 12.
Oh, I was way off. 8 and 12.
Thank you.
Individuals.
Great. So we wanted to share a little bit about what we're hearing so far. It's a lot of information, and we're still gathering more from those workshops and survey, but a few ideas that we're hearing so far. Folks have some ideas on improving or establishing new community partnerships, enhancing public transportation options, starting to hear about certain sites that might be potential for redevelopment opportunities, different ways to support small businesses, third places or kind of community gathering places. So there's home work, and then third places might be restaurants, parks, et cetera, public spaces. Emerging technology, which Arlington is a leader in already, but continuing to push the envelope there. Providing housing diversity and options for the community, and connections between different destinations. So enhancing how you can get from one place to another in Arlington. So just some of our emerging themes so far. And then from the first community workshop, again, just some of the high-level points. We just had this workshop 2 days ago, so we just wanted to share a little bit about what we heard. That was at the downtown library. So, a lot of love for the diversity of Arlington's community, desire for more greenery and green spaces, trails throughout the city. Again, public transportation, I mentioned. Community-focused events and programs, people would like to see more of those. More flexible regulations for things like accessory dwelling units, for example, ADUs. Desire to keep Arlington affordable as much as possible, and support for mixed-use centers, less auto-oriented commercial, and revitalizing older neighborhoods. So just a
Excuse me,
couple.
one other question I was going to ask based on that list of topics or feedback that we got. The public transportation system, long overdue, was that a fairly strong comment, or by the fact they say long overdue? I was just curious, because Arlington's had an interesting history as it relates to public transportation, as I'm sure most of you know. So what I'm sensing is that there's a change, but I'm trying to get an understanding of how much change there may actually be, or what we're sensing from some of these community meetings.
Sure, yeah, I think that it was said by a lot of people, which is why we're saying long overdue, but, TBD what that looks like. Like, we don't know the actual solution yet. Is that, a certain type of transit, or is it enhancing more reliability, more frequency of current systems? We're not sure, but generally a more desire to get around in a way that's not just a single vehicle.
Yeah, we had a little bit of internal conversation about it, sort of speculating on what it could have meant, because most people were just like, more transit, or we need transit. And so we were thinking that, in part, it's something that we want to investigate further, of course, in the upcoming community workshops, and chat with people about it and kind of dig deeper and get at the nuance. But we'll do that in future work as well. But the initial speculation, we were thinking, probably has to do with the increase in traffic that people are seeing, and congestion that they didn't deal with 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and maybe that being one of the solutions that's coming to mind. But definitely something we'll investigate more. Before we go on, I know several of you attended the workshop, so just if there were any impressions or takeaways that you wanted to share.
A couple questions on that, on these workshops. So first one would be, how are we tabulating the results? What method are we using to tabulate?
Sure. So the workshop has a number of different activities. If you were there, you saw there's some where it's like dot voting, sticker voting exercises. There's some where it's more open-ended. So it depends on the exact exercise. We're tallying all the dot results, and a lot of that overlaps with the community survey questions. So we plan to aggregate all of that information together, but we do have it separately as well. So maybe it's interesting if a workshop in one part of the city has sort of different feedback than in another part of the city. But generally tabulating, and then the open-ended responses, there's different ways we can go through that, but generally pulling key themes, common responses, that sort of thing, to summarize anything that was more open-ended, or like, what do you love about Arlington? There's a big poster where people could write on it. So it depends on the question.
How are you tabulating the writing? That was pretty creative. I saw those posters, so.
Yeah, so we'll document it all, and then we have a few different ways. I mean, we can go through it manually and start to pull out key themes and do tallies of all these different people mentioned. Great schools, let's say, for example.
Are we tracking the attendance by zip codes or demographics?
Yeah, we have optional sign-in because some people may not want to identify themselves necessarily in that way. So we do a clicker to count everybody who comes in the door, and then there's also sign-ups where people can say where if they live in Arlington. I forget the exact sign-in sheet. John, do you recall if it asks? I think it is zip code, or if you live in
Like
Arlington.
council district?
Council district, that was it. Thank you. Yeah. So we ask council district. So whoever signed in, we can see that distribution. And then the survey also asks the same thing.
Were there more people from the downtown district, council district than the other districts? Did you notice that?
I don't know. I haven't seen this.
I have not looked at that yet. We've just been go, go, go for these 3 days.
Yeah. So we'll certainly report back on more about who we heard from in this window next time. All right. So looking at our deliverables, I know John has shared some of this with you guys in advance. In phase one, we started with an engagement plan for the whole project, as well as a more specific engagement strategy for phase one. We plan to do an engagement strategy for each of the 3 phases, so that, let's say we're not getting great representation from certain parts of the city, we can pivot and build off engagement that was successful and do those strategies again, as well as to try new things. We'll be asking different questions, of course, later on. We also did a policy inventory and an existing conditions atlas. I have a few slides, which I'll share some of those. And then we are working on a growth factors and peer communities report, which Alicia will share some initial findings from. You also have an executive summary in front of you, which you're welcome to flip through when she gets to that as well. So the policy inventory, the purpose of this is, we know that the city has a lot of existing plans, including the currently adopted comprehensive plan. We really want to make sure that this process, we're not starting from scratch. We want to look at the adopted plans that the city currently has, whether that's Parks and Rec master plan, comprehensive plan, all types of different neighborhood plans, and see, what's currently in those plans, what is still relevant, what needs to be updated, what's been accomplished since those plans have been adopted. So we looked at 26 different plans. We have a big inventory of all these policies, the status of them, whether that's in progress, which is about 60% of the policies, recommendations, actions, et cetera. 15% complete, 20% not started. And then for each of these different topic areas, we kind of pulled some key types of policies or actions that we're seeing in those plans. So for economic development and other development, there's a lot of adopted policy in Arlington for business and incubation support, new incentives for development and public-private partnerships. And this is just a sampling. We're happy to share our larger summary report. Regarding neighborhood and housing strategies, there's some great housing market analyses that have been done, policies for creating student housing, encouraging mixed-use development, and promoting neighborhood-led initiatives. Mobility and transportation, the city has a safe streets policy. There's a hike and bike plan for multimodal investments. There's several rideshare programs and support for high-speed rail, for example. Public spaces and placemaking. So the city has adopted policy for urban design strategies, how to create quality public spaces, identity signage, beautification, and then infrastructure and technology. There is policy for embracing innovation, integrating autonomous vehicles, and piloting emerging technologies. So just some key highlights from that analysis. Again, we have this inventory now that we're going to reference back. This will be a new and updated plan, of course, but again, we want to build off of what's been done. And then the existing conditions atlas, just a few highlights to share here. So we looked at the existing land use data that the city has. I think it's a couple of years old. It was maybe 2022 or 23, but pretty much the same. So single family residential takes up about 45% of the city's footprint right now. There is 3 categories of vacant land in the city's data. That's undevelopable, underdevelopment, and developable. So 6.5% of the city is classified as vacant and developable. So that's a little over 3,000 acres. So one of our next steps is to look more into what type of land is that, what are the ownership patterns and whatnot. And then so far seeing more opportunities for redevelopment along major corridors.
Oh, yes. Well, one second, Bill. What I'd like to do is I want everyone to be able to communicate absolutely freely because that's how we get our ideas out, share information. But just for the record, because some people are going to watch this back and they're not going to know who made whichever comment because they might want to contact you to give you their feedback. Sure. And I won't remember who said things. So let's keep our conversation going freely. I'm not going to interrupt, but just state your name and ask your question. And that way, we'll be in better shape down the road, especially if someone's questioning something that we'll be able to say, this is the actual person who has the information. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Sure, good point. Bill Frawley. On the developable land, that's 6.5% of the total. is there any look at, or is that a bunch of really small lots? Are there large parcels? Is it a big mix?
Yeah, it's a mix right now. It's a little hard to see, but it's this light pink color on the left side. Left map here is vacant and developable, so it kind of varies across the city. There's certainly some large parcels, and then there's also small ones sprinkled, so both really.
As Ellie said, that it's a big piece of what we're doing moving forward, though, particularly around the focus areas identification. So there's citywide mapping that we're going to be doing, kind of looking out to the future, and then looking at particular focus areas. And one of the inputs into identifying which areas should be focus areas are looking at underutilized or redevelopable land, as well as land that's still open for development. So we'll dig deeper into that. Jay Rankins, by the way.
This is Anthony Powell. One other follow-up question on the land use. How does our current land use breakout compare to some of the other communities that we've said we may want to compare ourselves to or benchmark against in terms of particularly the single-family percentage? And, I'm just trying to get a sense of how we stack up compared to some of these other communities that we're studying.
We haven't done a direct comparison of the land use breakdown, but we are aware from City of Arlington staff that both in the metro region as well as even nationally, Arlington is relatively high in terms of density, so units per acre. One of the things that we want to investigate a little bit further, because we've been hearing a little bit, particularly this kind of visit with the community open house, talking with Planning and Zoning Commission yesterday, is the question about how do we stack up in terms of multifamily versus a single family detached, single family attached, and how does the residential composition stack up towards to commercial? So those are definitely things that we're going to investigate further.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, and just to clarify, this is acreages, so we're not counting for units. So, maybe the multifamily slice is that small little yellow slice, but it actually may have, more units when we look at it that way. So we'll dig into that further. And then the economy, this I'll touch on briefly because Alicia is going to deeper dive into this in a minute, but generally we're seeing that Arlington has a strong business environment. Visitor spending is increasing over the past decade. We are seeing residents having significant commuting distances. Maybe they often live in Arlington and work somewhere else or vice versa. And then recognizing that Arlington does have a lot of strong local workforce talent, in part from UTA as one factor there. And then the community, again, diversity is something that is really a big value and present in Arlington. We're seeing decreased crime, but ongoing public safety needs nonetheless. Large youth population, and we looked a bit into some environmental factors, and there are signs of rising heat risks as well. As we know, it's a hot climate down here. Just a couple other maps. We've got congestion. So the red lines, if you can see those, are the lowest level of service for vehicle traffic. So Cooper Street in particular is showing up as pretty low service for traffic, a lot of congestion down there. The rest of the city is sort of spread out, with purple being level C and D, light blue being B, and dark blue is A. So the dark blue streets are a great level of service, and it kind of is mixed from there. The map on the right shows amenities, so we're starting to look at where are major community amenities, things like libraries, medical facilities, religious institutions, schools. What is the distribution of those across the city? Are there neighborhoods that have less access than other parts? So we're going to be digging into that a little bit more as well. And I'll hand it off to Alicia.
Thanks, Ellie. Again, I'm Alicia Osborne with NAO Partners, and I'll be talking a little bit about how Arlington is positioned in terms of growth, and these next couple of slides will be divided in kind of three big categories around the people that live here, as well as the places, and talk a little bit about the peer cities that we'll be starting with to benchmark some of the strategies or things that we would like to address throughout the process. And so this is intended to be a complement to the existing conditions report. So Ellie's done a good job in sharing kind of the basic information about the great things about Arlington. It's the 50th largest city and has, it's the fourth diverse. I think a couple of months ago, it might have been the fifth, but that means you're getting more diverse, so that's great. And one thing that stood out amongst all of the information about it, that we have a strong sports and entertainment community, as well as 99 parks. We talked about that today and visited a lot of those. That's really some amenities to celebrate, but you really have a good education, world-class education system, world-class entertainment, amazing parks, and some emerging technology in transportation, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the people, we're projected to grow about 415 to 420,000 in the next 20 years. That's a range, and we're, which means that globally or around the Metroplex, you are growing a little bit slower, but that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. And I talked to a gentleman the other day about what that really means is that you have an opportunity through this process to get ahead of some of the things, the growing pains that a lot of cities are experiencing. So you can look into growth strategies, look into transportation, mixture of uses, and get ahead of some of the growing pains that other cities are having. The other thing that really stands out about Arlington is that the diversity, there's a lot of foreign-born population, and so that gives you that global perspective in terms of community and how others are able to bring their lived experiences and who they are to the place that makes it so diverse. Well-educated community, as well as a younger population. The median age is around 34, but it also has a span of retirees and work population that's mostly working within the community. So a great foundation of diversity is what the city has to build on moving forward as it grows for the next couple of years. And this is just a snapshot of some of the major industries that Arlington has a privilege of having. Aerospace, all the way to automotive manufacturing. Just a mixture of major industries that are here. And here's the breakdown of what those specific employment industries are. As you can see, a lot of educational services, industry growth with potential we have in terms of information technology, construction. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of diversity in terms of employment to build upon that the city already has, and has some opportunities to work more toward creating more of a tech talent, kind of really leveraging that with the schools being in town, and just really trying to grow in that industry as well. But we have a good foundation so far. So I talked a little bit about mobility and transportation, transportation infrastructure. We heard a lot about more public transit, but nobody was specific about what that is, which is a good thing. So there's opportunities to talk about it throughout the process, but you do have a lot of emerging, innovative mobility options. A lot of cities are just starting to use these technologies, but Arlington started with these technologies. So it's a little bit in reverse that you all chose to be more kind of cost-effective with your transportation options, but you are addressing that there's other ways that people want to get around. But there's more opportunity to definitely expand and talk about that throughout this process. And so this is not a new information, but what it does tell us is that there are a lot of people commuting outside of the city to work. But as we grow and think about job creation in the city, that we want to be able to retain some of those workers in town. And so as we dive deeper into the process, we'll learn who those folks are that are community, and how do we think about providing those types of jobs as we think about job creation right here to kind of reverse that pattern as we grow in the community. So let's pivot a little bit to talk a little bit about the physical development. So what these numbers say is 1,600 commercial permits, that there's a strong activity or strong commitment to investing in Arlington. And that is a trend that we want to continue to leverage and move forward as we grow in the community. No surprise as to where that commercial development is going, of course, along the major corridors, but we know that some of that development, commercial development, is aging. So we've been talking about, and we heard a lot from the community about reimagining what that commercial looks like in the future. So we'll be able to talk about those opportunities as we move forward. The next is residential development. These numbers also indicate a strong investment in residential within the community. It's on trend with the national trends that we're seeing. But this 469 and demolition permits gives us an indication that there is some opportunity for infill development, that folks are thinking about reimagining where they are in their spaces. And so that number may or may not change, but it is something that we can keep an eye on, that there's opportunity for residential to have a new life cycle. So this is a snapshot of kind of the market trends. The average home values are increasing within the community. The vacancies are decreasing, so there's definitely a steady uptick or increase in the number of folks that want to live here. And then the number of housing that's being built between 2019 and 23. They're no or later being built in 2020 or later. So what this all says to us is that there's a strong market. There's an opportunity to address, and we'll see in the next slide, housing diversity. We talked a lot about that this week within the community. In some of our other meetings, they've talked about different housing types. But this is to let us know that the market is strong and probably ready for some different housing types. So this lets us know, coupling with the other slides, about housing affordability, how the median household income is 73 per capita income, and then how much folks are spending in rent. So these numbers give us an indication that affordability is something that we have the opportunity through this process to address. As the city grows, housing costs increase. We have to make sure that the income keeps up with the pace of the housing costs. And so as we're thinking about jobs, what are those job types that we need to consider to make sure that the income balances with the rising housing costs so that affordability doesn't become a serious issue? But these numbers tell us that there's something that we should be addressing within this process. So we've talked a lot about peer cities and what this all means. So we like to think about, we always learn from other cities and what they're doing well and what we can do better. And so we started with a list of cities that the city has historically been compared to. What you see on the right hand of the slide are the initial components or criteria that we use to select the cities that you'll see on the next slide. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at cities that have a similar age of incorporation. You wouldn't want to compare yourself to New York, because that's a big major city and it's large and it's older. Land size, we considered government structure, looked at unemployment levels. We started with here's where Arlington is today and what cities are facing some of the similar challenges around managed growth, sustainability, transportation, how are they addressing transportation options, how are they competing or positioning themselves as a part of a larger metroplex. So this is just an initial list of cities that we will glean some ideas from as we start the process. But as we hear more from the community, hear more from you all, and from some of our elected and appointed officials, we will learn from this list will definitely grow. By the end of it, maybe 20, 30 cities. We have no idea. But it's just a start to say they have something that we want to learn from, and then the list will grow as we continue to identify those strategies that we want to address in the future. So some of the key takeaways, population growth is steady, diversity is key. We have the opportunity to have robust innovation ecosystem. We already have that. How do we leverage it? How do we make sure that we leverage the educational population, the educational opportunities that we have, and other opportunities, identify possible incentives to maintain housing affordability and the market, continue to think about transportation investments, big or small. There's a continuum of things you can do, and we'll learn more and come up with ideas as we continue with the process. And also, how do we grow a tech industry? How can we start to talk about or leverage the tech talent that we already have within the community? So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ellie or Jay.
Yeah, and I have a couple of
let's-
questions
Let's
too.
take some questions on this section.
Robert Snyder, and I was wondering, can we or have we looked or used any geofencing technology or anything to look at the largest employers that are here in town, maybe find out where their employees are coming from, where they live, if they're contributing anything to the city in terms of a tax base or retail sales, anything like that?
Yeah, we have not. We have worked with other communities that have access to it's cell phone based data basically to do that work. I don't know if the city of Arlington has that. Sometimes it's the economic development group that will, so we can chat with them and see if that data exists. If it does, we'd love to look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Again, Taylor Oldroyd, just a couple of questions. You were on a roll, so I didn't want to stop you. It was great data. In fact, I don't know who all put this together, John. This is, this existing conditions atlas is fantastic. So if it's you all or, anyway, really, really good data. On slide 27, in our packet, it's fine. On the screen, there were some errors on it. I don't know if it's available online, so I want to make sure that slide 27 is correct. If I don't know if you can pull it up, but some of the boxes in there weren't filled out in here, but in ours. So anyway, I don't know if there needed to be something fixed there, because it just is the demographic one. So
I noticed
fixed
that
itself.
too.
I think
Yeah,
maybe it was-
must be a display.
Some of them were blank there
projection
before. I
issue
don't
or
know if
something.
anybody
Yeah.
else noticed that. So anyway, okay, perfect. See how quick you guys are? Man, these guys are amazing.
Uh-huh. I was just thinking, I
Amazing.
just hit the button and it fixed it.
I had a question about slide 32, which is the worker commute patterns, maybe similar to what Robert was getting at.
Yeah.
My question
really
is
odd that's
about
not
an indication of success. I mean, there's a large percentage of our city is commuting out for employment. Is that how does that cut on a success of a community, or how does it just change it when much of our city is going somewhere else? And kind of to your point, coming in, does that help us? I mean, it just seems like it certainly would be an indication of success or not. I just wondered from y'all's experience if you could comment about that.
Sure. I can start, and then Alicia and others, please. I think it's typically a goal to balance the jobs and housing units. Typically, is what's looked at. They end up being around the same, housing units and jobs, just based on number of workers in a household, that sort of thing. But what we see happen is there's always in-community and out. So even in those places where it is balanced, there ends up being in-community and out-commuting. So I've never seen a city where 100% of the jobs within that city are filled by people who live in that city, right? And then it's complicated here, I think, because you have two major cities on either side of you, as well as a bunch of other cities around and different employment opportunities. And so what you end up having happen, I think, with the distribution that we have currently is there's a lot of demand on the roadways is one thing, so infrastructure. So a lot of the congestion that people are feeling, it's not just because of what's happening in Arlington, it's because people are commuting out in different patterns. And then there's one of the things that we're going to be looking at moving forward is thinking about the fiscal sort of picture. And so it's not so, I don't know that's like the end of the world that people are commuting out, but it means that there's more employment likely outside of Arlington than inside. And so is it beneficial for us to have some of that tax base, some of that intellectual capital in the city that will continue to drive the economy, attract residents, retain? There was a conversation we were just having with city management and talking about brain drain, right? Like UT Arlington is producing all these great minds. How do we keep more of them here? Having great employment opportunities is going to be a piece of that. So there's a lot of considerations around it, I'd say, but I'd say having great employment and growing that employment base is a desire. Figuring out what the right balance is will be something that we'll investigate with our different scenarios, scenario planning, the policy work that we do. But
Well, I appreciate those comments. There's kind of a saying here in town, we're nobody's suburb. You know, the data would suggest, you know, to some degree we are. And part of that's just a cultural thing of like, we're awesome here.
Yeah.
Because if most of your residents are going somewhere else to work, I mean, that is one of the definitions of a suburb in some ways. So I think that would be a focus, is hopefully getting more of a jobs here in town.
Yeah.
So we maybe can one day not be
Yep.
so many suburb. Last question for me, slide 35 on residential development. With those number of permits over the last 10 years, and maybe this is a question for Jinsey, but how many permits are issued but haven't been built on? And maybe, you know, are there, because from what I understand, there's a fair number that are permits issued but haven't been built on.
I can try to answer that. So many of the permits issued, 95% of them are built. But where they get stuck is before the issuance. So there's a status called as approved but not issued, meaning they haven't paid the full permit fees. That's where it becomes issued, right? So, but before that, if the project is not moving forward, meaning there's some issues with financing, the market conditions, whatever happens, and the developer decides at that time that they cannot start construction, they will stop before the issuance.
This is Bill Frawley. The first one, and these may be things to talk about more with specific people on the team or the city, whatever, but bring it up as it came up. On slide 23, looking at the roadways, and there's the level of service listings, A through.
Yep.
Just my experience in transportation planning, that's antiquated. And there's travel time index, planning time index, reliability that might be a little bit better data. It's also more relatable to decision makers and the lay people, so to speak, as opposed to level of service C. And I got C's in college, so I know what that meant for me, but on a roadway.
Yep.
And then on slide 27, I mean, not looking for a quick answer, just bringing a couple things up. Then on slide 27, on the population, a thought that popped into my mind while looking at the projection in 20 years, is that just simply coming from the American Community Survey, the ACS, or is there gonna be an opportunity for the project team, the city, us, whatever, to look at, okay, what are the specific situations and circumstances in Arlington? Because you can straight line or do some other projections for other types of cities that aren't landlocked or almost built out and different density changes in here. So is that gonna be something that might be looked
Yes.
at more? Okay.
Yeah, it's not a, so we have done a lot of comprehensive plans where the growth projection is a given. We're using other parts of Texas. We've used the Department of Finance's projection at the state level, so the state's Department of Finance, and then worked with the regional government to look at the city's allocation of that. What we've done here is we have looked at the NCCOG, right?
NCTCOG,
Yeah, NCTCOG's projections for the county, looked at the traditional sort of capture of that, but actually what we're depicting here is coming from other planning work that's been done over the last 5 to 10 years. The water plan, those sorts of things. But we want to look at some variability there and kind of figure out what makes sense for Arlington. So that's a piece of what we'll be investigating with that scenario planning work. Yeah.
Thanks. The last question, and this could sound snide, and I don't really mean it to, on slide 41, where it says in the middle bullet, transit investments increasing. And so I just have the word really with a question mark. I mean, maybe there are some small increases, maybe there's some I'm not aware of, but again, I don't mean that to sound smart aleck here, but I am curious just to, at some point.
What magnitude that is, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, heck, you know, I increased my dog's dog food last week, but it was just by a little bit. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We got too.
Yeah, Mike Telambus. On slide 37, housing affordability, I wanted to let you know that this kind of resonated with me, some of the comments that you make. I think that when people talk about housing affordability, they tend to jump to building smaller lots, smaller houses, mixed houses to attain the affordability factor. But what you brought out is that that's not necessarily the main avenue to go down. It's to bring the jobs in that are higher paying, that can afford the houses that we have right now. So that's the goal I would like to try to achieve too.
It's a little bit of both. You have to attack it both ways. You can't build your way out of it.
Well, I think we have enough affordable houses in Arlington already. We need to build our housing, our job to continue to be able to afford those houses.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh,
My name is Akram Siddiqui, and I wanted to ask about the Hispanic population. On the slide 27, I didn't see, is it covered under 19% other, or
27. Keep going back.
9%?
So I believe that ACS, a Hispanic population, is asked as a separate question for ethnicity, and this is the response to the race question. So we would have to pull that. I don't know the number off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Can I add something in on that real quick? If it's not, so that's a tough thing to figure out from the census data because there's Hispanic, not of white or Caucasian, there's Hispanic, or white, not of, Caucasian, not of Hispanic. I've done a lot of work with that in some places, and that's very tough, so it may take a while to get that answer. Yeah. I think we have one more right here.
Oh, yeah.
Nia Henderson, I have one question. I actually have two. On slide 39, where you had comparing Arlington to peer cities, and in previous slides, you addressed some of these peer cities, but I wondered if you compared major employers. Was major employers one of the candidates for the categories of the employers in these cities, or is it just simply population-based, making it a peer city?
No, it's all the factors on the right and probably another 15 other data points that help to come up with the city, but major employers was not a key. Are you suggesting that we look at that?
I am not.
Okay.
I'm just curious. That was included because some of those do have employer similarities to ours. They do pair well with us. So I was just curious. My other question was, we didn't talk about age in this presentation, but we have in the other ones, because right here we're talking about income, working. We're not talking about age diversity and how many people are retired or not working, the percentage of our population. Does anybody remember that number?
So on 7, we talked about the median age, and then at the bottom, we talk about the labor market, the difference, the 16 years and older participating in the labor market. So we can have more detail in the final report if you want to break it down a little bit further.
I just don't know off the top of my head what percentage of our population is retired. Does anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
We can find out.
Thank you.
Ken Cox, one comment to make about, I read the document that you emailed out. One of the criteria for finding a city that's similar was they were looking for cities that were sandwiched in between two other large cities. And that's why Plano was one of them. I think they've almost maxed out their space and they're surrounded by larger cities.
One other question, I guess, or comment, and I know we talked about the population. This is Anthony Powell. We talked about the overall population by 2045, and initially that sounded like a pretty reasonable number, but the more I thought about it, I'm trying to realize, is that a truly significant growth number, or is that something, I'm not sure where the projections have come from. I don't know if we have that answer, but I think that's a key number that we probably want to focus or just be aware of and say, is this the right number that we want to strive for? Is it high, is it low, or, where are we on that? But, so anyway, that was it was kind of a second thought as somebody made the comment about the growth projections.
Yep, absolutely. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
Mike Talambas, kind of following up on that. You have to look in to see, okay, how do we attain that extra 20,000 people in the city of Arlington when only 6% of the land is developable, of which some is commercially zoned. So that leaves a very small sliver of land that's residential zone. So what that tells me is that growth is going to come from multifamily. And then we have, as a committee, we need to decide whether that's where we want to head in building more multifamily in Arlington and, or not. And that should be a factor in our comprehensive plan.
Absolutely. All right. So I have to advance here. Sorry. All right. Goals and outcomes. This is going to be a relatively quick hit because we want to make sure we have enough time for the mapping exercise as well. But just a couple of kind of contextual slides for you all. This was from our very first steering committee meeting. Marco was over on the wall on the chairs, recording with the markers, if you recall. And so up on the top, just calling out a couple of the key takeaways he sort of was elevating as far as kind of vision, goal type of thoughts. Vibrant, international, the best, distinct. And then in the first column, those are sort of takeaways from the visioning exercise that we did, where we're looking at the headlines and whatnot. And so we had regional center, vibrant, complete community, where dreams come true, wins Olympic bid, economically diverse, people don't want to leave, leads from the heart, best places to live, or best place to live, international place, Arlington Cowboys wins Super Bowl. That was a quote from the headlines. Entertainment Center of North Texas, Live, Work, Play, the Arlington Way, place for regional collaboration, a casino, neighborhoods protected and revitalized, and all kids can play. Some of the feedback we've heard kind of through those ongoing conversations that Robin talked about, this idea of embracing innovation, supporting the local economy, keeping up with growth. I think that means primarily the infrastructure and the amenities are keeping up with new development or new types of development that we might have. We did actually, I mentioned the conversation we had with city manager's office, and there was a few other departments as a part of that. There was also some caution about using the word growth even, right? Like maybe yes, there are likely going to be some growth. A lot of it may be redevelopment, reinvestment, investing in existing places and neighborhoods. So we'll think about how we message that and couch that because some of the terminology that we tend to use in the comprehensive plan arena, I think sort of suggests that growth is inevitable. And I think as the discussion has been had tonight, we want to be really cognizant of the fact that, yes, we need to accommodate some amount of growth, but we're not growing for growth's sake, right? So how do we make sure that is contributing to a great place, contributing to good quality of life for all Arlingtonians? Creating the social connections and then focusing redevelopment in certain places. And then these are the comprehensive plan goals from the 2015 update. So value our neighborhoods, get around, protect our resources, grow our businesses, develop our land. Short, sweet, some of them kind of suggest direction, some of them are more topics. So something that we really want to do with this effort is make sure that the goals, it's very clear what the direction is. Ideally, whether it be in the goal itself or maybe some supporting objectives, that they're measurable, that we know if we're achieving them or not. So with that, we wanted to do a quick goals and aspirations exercise. And Ellie is going to help me do that. So what we want you to do is pull out your phone and either use a QR code And this would be in your packet, or you can use the one on screen, or you can navigate to www.menti.com. That's MENTI. And then there's a 8-digit code at the bottom to go to. We'll leave that up for a second.
Okay, there we go, the first one. You can just hit the next arrow down here.
Okay. Great. So the first question, and again, if you still need to navigate to that, page 16 of the packet of slides has the QR code at the bottom. Or you can use the code on the top there, 58686243 when you go to menti.com. And so the first piece here is, what aspirations do you think the city should have for this goal around value our neighborhoods? So if we're kind of using the same, if we think the categories are right from the previous comprehensive. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not advancing it. Like, we'll get. Oh, I got you. The QR code. Okay. Huh. Tricky. Yes. It disrupted the QR code. Yeah, so I won't advance until everyone gets on here. But so yeah, we'll just step through each of these like major 5 goal categories, I'll call them, from the 2015 plan. So this first one, value our neighborhood. So we're hearing safe to walk, engaged citizens, green space required, continue sidewalk upgrades, safe, family-friendly, walkable, able to navigate streets safely. Protecting historic structures, limit on-street parking. Provide safe, accessible developments, including mixed use, that are ADA walkable, or ADA compliant, I guess. Monitor risky areas in an efficient way, continue innovation in trash and recycling. Great. So we should. There's 12 committee members. We have 7 responses so far. So 5 of you. What are you pointing? I can see lower right. So there's responses, and then there's number of responses. Respondents. So 9 respondents. What aspirations do you think the city should have for the value our neighborhood goal? Okay, great. Anyone else still working on this one? Just yes? Okay.
Well, this is Anthony Powell. While we're waiting, just something that occurred to me, and I don't know that it fits into the responses here, but it's more of a comment about Arlington that I've always observed. Compared to a lot of communities, Arlington neighborhoods and Arlington, the city in general, is not, or is, let me say it in the positive or in the proactive way, it's a very diverse community, which we know, but that diversity exists throughout the city. Compared to most cities that I'm familiar with, there are normally pockets within those cities where certain either racial groups or income groups or other things seem to, you can kind of, identify certain areas of town. And that doesn't exist in Arlington, or at least that's not very observable to me. There may be a few locations. And so I don't know, potentially you could see that as a strength, but I think we want to maybe explore that a little bit more as we continue to go through our process here. So it was just more of an observation than an absolute comment. I never could have put that in a word or two, but.
That's great. Thank you.
Anyway.
Yep. Okay, so everyone has responded to this one. Great. So I'm going to advance to the next. So get around. As a goal, it's not saying too much. So What aspirations do you think the city should have for getting around, so mobility in Arlington? And we're going to use this input as well as inputs we're collecting from the community to draft our initial set of goals to bring back to you all for review. So it's your chance to help shape this. So reliability, safety, more bike facility, bike lanes, safe parking, public transit, walkability again, bike friendly. Great. Traffic signal engineer in the room. Traffic light system syncing for more efficient traffic flow at peak and off-peak times. Using technology to avoid empty buses. Encourage alternatives to parking like the businesses who offer shuttles. Time traffic lights better, use tech, affordable public transportation, continue innovative approach, to public transportation. Doesn't it normally like scroll by itself? Oh, I guess I can do it. Need transportation solutions both within Arlington and from and to Arlington. So thinking about regional connections as well as the sort of internal local connections. More turn lanes. Some sort of transit service. Thinking about visitors and employees. Faster north-south corridors, connections at DFW and Love Field, thinking innovatively to use our limited space wisely, and close some roads, make more one-way roads. Great. All right, I'm going to advance to the next one. Anyone want to, as we advance to the next one, anyone want to elaborate on their transportation input? You don't have to, but just curious. Yeah, go ahead. And feel free to enter for the Protect Our Resources as we're having the conversation. Go ahead, Nina.
This is Nina Henderson. I wanted to say for transportation, if we really want downtown to vitalize, we need more than one not level crossing access to get from Division to Abram.
Yeah.
In my opinion, just experiencing downtown over and over again every week.
Yep.
So.
Did you submit that?
I did not.
I
Yes,
typed
I did. Yes, I
okay, I
did.
typed it in at the very last minute.
Did
That's the
you?
reason I
So I'm
asked.
not the
yeah.
only one.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
Just a couple of things I was thinking about on transportation is when I've gone to visit another major city for a convention or tourism, either one or both, it's very important to me that there's some type of reliable connection between the airport and the downtown or like our entertainment district where the convention center and hotels are. And usually it's preferable if it's some type of rail. The bus systems, unless it's an express, lugging suitcases, too many stops. So I think that's why it's important for us to be able to develop that convention business to have some type of, in addition to Uber or Lyft and the other ride shares, that type of thing. The other thing I think is important is the entertainment district grows with employees at hotels and other service industries there. And this idea comes from when I was working with Lake Charles, Louisiana. They have some casinos. They're a smaller area, 150,000 metro area, but they are looking at the opportunities to provide enhanced shuttles or transit for the lower wage employees that have a tough time getting to and from work, either because of the number of vehicles per household and that also takes a number of vehicles off the roadway too. That's very specific, but those are the types of things that accommodating what will hopefully be an increased convention business.
Great, thank you. So that the third goal area from the previous plan was protect our resources. So we're hearing things like historic preservation, sustainability, enhance our parks, protect the green spaces, more historic preservation, sustainability, maintaining green space, having more connected green spaces, continue monitoring the tree ordinance, storm drainage ways managed, designating which species of trees can be added when trees are removed or die. Yeah, we were talking about the fact that the city does not have an urban forestry plan right now. So the tree ordinance is one thing, but is there a broader kind of look? So maybe setting the stage for some of that with the comprehensive plan. Manage flood areas better, significantly overgrown with invasive species. More connected green spaces, manage the flood resources better, continue to develop and enhance city parks. Landfill, water and sewer capacity, so making sure we're keeping up again with the needs of the city. Continue monitoring, oh, we said that already, sorry. Keep our talented resources, keep our people in Arlington. So thinking about resources beyond just natural resources, thinking about the people resources. Water, we lose 60% of our water through leakage and waste. Continue to develop and enhance the parks, take care of what we already have, water availability, enforcement of deed restrictions, and create and promote our walkway and bike system. These are great, thank you. All right, fourth area. Grow our businesses. So this is really about economic development. The way it's phrased here, it's really about, I guess, retention and growth of existing businesses, but I would say anything kind of in the economic development realm is fair game. So that would include workforce, kind of thinking about employees, their skills, education, incomes. That's to do with attracting new businesses, entrepreneurship, and creating new businesses as well as existing businesses. Recruiting businesses to town. EDC is just getting started, and we love Mary and Gus. They're awesome. Attract higher wage employees by attracting quality developments. Maintains large employers while gaining more. Support future casino industry. Better support of the small businesses.
Hey, that was a typo. This is Taylor Oldred. That's Marty and Gus, not Mary.
Oh, okay. Marty and Gus.
Fat fingers here, sorry. Marty, not Mary.
All right. Reduce and reevaluate regulations that hurt business growth. Incentivize student employment in some way. Revitalize a division corridor. The airport has great potential. Attract unique businesses, create new businesses. Support future casino industry. I think I skipped that one. Looks like maybe two or three more people may be responding still. There we go. Unique businesses. I think that's interesting considering, yeah, the different areas of town as well as being surrounded by other communities. So what is making it unique? Continue to incentivize seed businesses, UTA incubator, promote balanced business development throughout the city, build on success of the entertainment district, spread down division corridor, continued growth in the entertainment district, strive to become a convention destination, retain the UTA graduates to live and work here, and limit new licenses of overpopulated business categories. Great. All right, and our last category, thanks for hanging with us on this one. It's just a really efficient way to get a lot of input quickly, so thank you for bearing with us. Develop our land. So this had to do with the land use policies, where we wanted to focus and target growth, the idea of creating some activity centers in different places around town. So develop our land, and also protection of certain lands too, right? There's the flip side, what are we not developing? So in this general category, again, looking forward for this plan, looking forward to the next 20 years, what aspirations do you think the city should have? You just go for it. being pro-development, demolish underutilized improvements, retain green space, encourage sustainable development, appropriate and timely development regulations, permitting processes, encourage mixed-use developments, the application process improvements, allow more by rights zoning, spur pocket neighborhood development, be open to atypical housing options, protect green spaces while developing new commercial and residential spaces, infill redevelopment incentives, multi-use projects. Infill is our future. Rezone areas that are not compatible with surrounding areas, be smart about development, needs to check multiple boxes for the city. I guess I'm curious, so there's definitely, I'm seeing some mixed opinions here. So some people are saying, let's raise the bar, let's require more of folks who want to develop, expect more. And then there's the pro-development, which I'm sure there's caveats to that too, but just any insights, whether you left that comment or not. Any thoughts around this balance of, do we, development is good, we want it, let's make it happen, make it easy as possible, versus let's raise the bar, ensure quality, that sort of thing. Yes.
This is Bill Frawley. One of the things that I've seen and heard from people trying to do or doing developments or considering it in Arlington, as well as in lots of other places around Texas, is that sometimes a personal preference of someone in a city staff can make a difference in how a development proposal, permits, review goes. And if whatever ways there are, there's some cities that do it very well and some that could learn from it. But to make sure that it's really objective more than subjective, if that makes sense, and trying to say it pretty tactfully.
Ken Cox, my comment would be that some people won't invest in more mature cities because the regulation is too difficult for them. And so if we could find ways to make it easier, and I know that's very hard, but especially for the small builders, because if you think of all the small little lots that we have sprinkled throughout our city, that no big developer is going to come. And the small builder that would actually do a one-off, it's too hard for them. So I think something that, and I may be thinking outside the box, but wouldn't it be great if, the city would have someone appointed to help that builder or that investor to say, we love your idea, we'd love for you to invest in Arlington, let's help you with the process. Because for me, self-taught builder, I had to learn everything, and I learned it the hard way. I'm doing commercial now, and it's really difficult, and it'd be great if you had someone that could just mentor you without hiring the giant firms. And so I've seen that personally, and it'd be like, I've got one now that is like, you know what, I need to meet the inspector, but have them educate me. I could read this 800-page document on these rules, but maybe someone could just tell me this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So, but that's just something that I see is that, it's harder for the small developers that have limited budgets to come in and understand the process.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Ken. Any other thoughts on that topic? Yeah.
I think that you need to maintain a standard and a high quality standard for anything that's going to be developed or redeveloped in Arlington. A lot of developers might want to come to our city looking at the demographics and want to bring their C plan when we really want to have their A plan. If we start allowing them to build those C plans, we're just going to get more of the same, and everyone is going to continue. So I think you have to draw the line somewhere, say this is what we want in Arlington from here on out and going forward, and stick to it. And they may not want to build it, fine, that's great. They can go find it someplace else to build it. But in Arlington, we're going to upgrade our city and provide quality developments, and I think we need to stick to that.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Mike. Nina?
This is Nina Henderson. As we were discussing this and typing them up, I could envision something I'd experienced overseas, and that's the creation of a little downtown-like area, like we used to have a downtown, but it's not outside. It's inside, or it might have an open center, but it would have adequate parking that is 3 to 7 layers high, floors high, for cars to park in, but you could go in and get your groceries, or you could buy clothes, or you could get your dog's feet trimmed, or whatever you needed, but it was accessible for everyone, and you use one shopping trolley to go in every place that you went. And I can see them up north by Veridian. I can see one just outside of kind of our downtown municipal area. Just have sections of those. There's a company called Westfield who develops those. They own more parking structures than anyone else throughout the world, and they have parking structures right next to these sorts of things. So where we have gone linear with all of our stuff and taking up whole streets or blocks or 2 blocks, they've built them up, put more in one space, use half of that space for parking so that you're in the shade and it's easy to access, and have that sort of a town feeling indoors in a controlled environment. So when my comment came through about something like that, that's what that means. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And I think that'll be a nice segue. We did want to give everyone an opportunity to provide any goal ideas. It could be an actual, like articulating a goal. It could also be a topic maybe that those 5 kind of bigger goals from the previous plan don't touch. You want to make sure that we're considering moving forward when we're talking about vision and goals and the metrics for success. So we want to give you that opportunity, but Nina's comment is, I think, a good segue to our next piece, so I'll start to tee that up while some folks respond to this. We're going to be talking about kind of the initial, dipping our toe in the water around place types. So I'll explain what that is in a moment, but it's really kind of thinking about what types of development go where. And I'll explain how place types is a little different than what was used in the previous comprehensive plan, which is future land use. And then we'll do an exercise around that. Looks like a few people are typing in responses here still. Obviously not a required one if you feel like we've covered the major topics. But we're hearing maybe some things missing around education, health, healthy lifestyles, workforce development, making sure that we're emphasizing that in the economic piece, more family-friendly destinations and entertainment options. That was definitely one of the things that we heard about in several meetings now, but the first meeting that we all had. Educating the workforce should also include pipeline from AISD career tech programming. So not just thinking about UT Arlington. Safety in and around secondary schools, neighborhoods, apartment complexes, employment centers to attract local jobs and promote living and working in Arlington. These are great. Is this the last Mentimeter one? Yeah. So I can leave this, well, I can't. Well, I can leave it open, yes. I'll leave it open, you just won't see it anymore. So if people have additional ideas, please respond with that. This must be the right one. All right, so place types. So future land use is the way that a comprehensive plan typically and historically has provided direction on what can happen where in the city. Land use, a future land use map is a parcel by parcel map, puts a color on each parcel that represents what land use is envisioned or desired there, typically 20 years down the road in a comprehensive plan. It assumes that we have a perfect crystal ball and can say exactly what should go everywhere and will be market supported and what's going to happen next to it and all those different things, if we're going to have the infrastructure to support it. So we have sort of, not that we hate future land use, but I think we're big proponents of sort of evolving that idea a bit with this idea of place types. So place types does include land use, as you can see with that top bubble there, but also talks about built form, how are buildings related to each other, thinking about density to some extent, But more importantly, how are the multiple parcels adding up to something that's more of a cohesive whole, creating a place? Thinking about mobility and access requirements, parking, all those different things, how people are moving around in all different modes associated with a place, again, supporting that development, making sure it's jiving, people getting there, through there, around there, and then parks, open space, and trails and other amenities, could be thrown in that bucket too. Pulling that all together with really good urban design and placemaking. And you can see there's a little dashed line kind of going diagonally, separating land use and built form from parks, open space, trails, and mobility and access. It's not a perfect division, but generally you could think about kind of that blue and orange circle as the private sector kind of providing most of that. Obviously, the city, through the comprehensive plan, through zoning ultimately, other development standards help to shape that. But it's really the private sector delivering that. And then the purple and I guess what's showing up as black on the screen, it's supposed to be dark green, I think. It would be the public realm, sort of what is the public's responsibility and where they are investing.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Taylor Oldroyd, on the parks and trails, do we have data that shows how many residents or what kind of traffic our current parks have? I mean, do they keep track of it, Parks and Rec Department? Do they know, based on our population size, if our parks are being utilized?
I don't
Is there any
know
metrics
that.
on
I don't
that
know,
at all?
John, if you have any idea if there's data right now.
Yeah, I know it's probably hard to do, but.
That would be another good reason to have Placer AI or something like that with that cell phone data. Like I know that there's some park and rec departments that utilize that
I mean,
way, but I don't know
I
if
think
anything
it's
exists
pretty
right
easy
now.
to say, more parks and more trails, but are they used now much? I mean,
Yeah,
anyway, just curious.
yeah, well, I think it's a good point. And it may not necessarily, for clarification, it may not necessarily be new. Either it could be reinvestment in existing parks and open space, making sure that they're being maintained, that they're keeping up with, desired kind of trends and demands for different types of recreation. But yeah, I think that's a good point. So this is an example from Charlotte, North Carolina, of a portion of the place type. We call it the place type palette. So I'll use that terminology probably a lot in our meetings. But it's basically the set of places that the community wants to see in the future. So in this particular case, neighborhood 1 being kind of the predominantly residential area, mainly single-family detached homes, but having some other housing mixed into that, including ADUs, some small multifamily units even. So not so exclusionary with any one of these, similar with commercial. That commercial is the predominant use, but there is a need for some open space. There could be other services, incorporated into that. So each of these have varying degrees of a primary land use or uses and secondary land uses, and then goes further into sort of the density, the scale that's appropriate, as well as the infrastructure and amenities to support them. So that's one example where. Or I guess, and then this finishes it out. So there's activity centers of 3 different scales in the Charlotte example. So those would be more mixed-use places, kind of representing that third place as well. And for each one, we did a deeper dive then, looking at the characteristics of that place type, looking at land use, looking at the overall character, mobility, building form, open space, and then we modeled it, showing, kind of illustrating the key relationships, characteristics of that place type. Denver, Colorado, in what they call Blueprint Denver, which is their transportation and land use plan, they actually ended up organizing their plan not around plan or the traditional comprehensive plan elements. They actually organized the plan around those 4 big bubbles that I showed you. So they combined land use and built form, what I said was sort of the private realm, and then they had sections on mobility, and infrastructure, and then what they called quality of life infrastructure, which included parks, stormwater management, and other amenities. And so as we go through this process, we'll try to dial that in, what makes the most sense. In the Denver example, there was also this neighborhood context piece because it is a metropolitan city, center city. They go from a very, very dense downtown with buildings of 40 stories or more, all the way down to suburban development on its edges before you even get to the suburbs. Here we're talking about maybe focusing a little bit more on the life cycle of neighborhoods and districts, and considering using that sort of as an overlay, thinking about what types of investments are necessary, even if a place doesn't, obviously the people that are going to dictate this, but I'm just going to use this terminology. If a place wants to be the same thing in the future, right? Maybe it's using one of the Denver examples or Charlotte examples, let's say, neighborhood 2. If it's a neighborhood 2 designation in the future, well, that doesn't necessarily mean there's no change. It may be that there's additional investment in the parks, as we just said. It could be that there's a need for additional bike facilities or sidewalk facilities to make that more walkable. So there is evolution that still occurs. And then the other piece would be, or one more example is Frisco. Little lighter touch in Frisco, but focused on characteristics and intent of their different designations of places around the community, but used a similar approach in sort of using the place type palette as opposed to a more narrowly defined land use palette. So we do not have the time that's allocated on here. We probably have about 20 minutes for our exercise. But what we're going to do, I think we can achieve it. We're going to have a facilitator. Our team we're going to do, I guess we probably should do 4 groups, or do you want to do 3? Let's do 3 groups. 3 groups. 3 groups. So I think groups of 4, and there should be one of 5 if we do that. And so what we're going to do is look at or think about the places that we have in the community already, and identify those. And what we'd like to do is, they'll walk you through this, but think about the types of places that exist in Arlington, identify some examples of those on the map, and then talk about what are some improvements that you'd like to see or enhancements, investments in those types of places. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to also think about what's missing. What are types of places, like Nina was talking about with that great segue, that doesn't exist today that we'd like to see in the future? How do we start to identify those? So don't worry so much about the names. We'll work on that together. But just the concept of different types of places, districts, neighborhoods, different residential areas, employment areas, entertainment, shopping, all those different things. And it could be examples you've seen other places when you think about what is missing. But we're going to start out with what exists today. So let's do one group here. So maybe you 2 mind swinging around this side. Okay. And we'll use that table there. We'll do one group here, so if you can. Anthony, would you guys mind walking over? Oh, yeah. And then, this group can all be together. This is a group shot. So, maybe here.
Tell him I need to see him. He always gave me a good side hug. I need that side hug. He's a good hugger. Number 1 reason.
Oh, no, it's just for that sheet right there.
Yeah, so
Their theme.
So do you guys want to just check this for the meeting minutes?
I could give. Got it?
Just one, yeah.
Sure. The one from Charles. Just one of them? Sure. It doesn't include everything on one page, but this one does. This is from Denver. So it's centers, corridors, residential, different entities.
So you might want to start with
Campus.
residential, or maybe you want to start with commercial.
That's a good start.
But basically what we're
Simple.
So maybe there's a certain type of commercial area that is similar to what exists.
Oh, you're starting to.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So we're describing places. Yeah.
So maybe we should just start with like destinations. So how about commercial?
Well, what kind of
I can
neighborhood?
try to point to like. And would you group those two together, or do they seem like two different types of place in terms of how they're built?
Well, they're different, yeah, they're different environments, but they're both big retail stores. You know, my long-term fear is what's gonna happen to the mall. So the malls go away.
Different form. One is they open up the outside.
Maybe we could, is this useful or is the diagram useful? As we're talking about
The
like,
Venn
what's the
diagram.
form like, what's the land use like, what's the amenities like, as we're talking about the space like.
Because I think a lot of times you can shopping for a gift or something.
Yeah.
They're close enough together.
The other group had requested that.
Oh,
That's fine. They looked at it. Yeah, they looked at it.
Park Small is
The Park's Mall, maybe that's like, right, but I think we can add that to our list, so, whoever you are. So we can write Park's Mall.
I could do it.
Oh, I could read it. Actually, so are there any other places like the Park's Mall? So maybe that's our first step. So that's number
So
one.
mall, big mall is the first one.
Yeah, like a mall.
No, it's good.
So I'll
Or
put-
maybe it's like a bigger regional commercial area or shopping area.
Yeah.
Commercial shopping.
Well, we can talk about that.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
And then the Highlands, okay, so you guys mentioned that, so let's use that for number two. Is there anywhere else in the community that you're whether it be
Let me try to answer your question.
Or is that all?
They want Lincoln Square to be.
Session, if it is in RM12,
So the Highlands, it's a commercial area, it has a certain quantity.
I'm asking you to explain how to
There's
explain.
the restaurants up there, but I have.
Stories.
But I've been to
In
restaurants.
our,
So it's interesting. Probably that's using the size.
they wanted us 31 seater, yes, so less than what.
So maybe it's a small scale, maybe it's a number two also.
Is this the one that we're meeting tomorrow?
Yes.
You got it.
Okay, I'll put it up there.
They're trying to be.
Town, single family. Those will have maximum living. Now we go to overlays,
Yeah, so that would be a place size with retailers. That would be.
Keep going.
everywhere. That's why the setbacks need to be established for the DNO.
Okay, so setbacks are always the DNO overlay,
Yeah.
and then everything else is RM's
Yeah,
problem.
because, because
When we're talking about this one.
about this particular party, not giving them more in the downtown area.
Southwest Arlington residential district. You know, you have an entertainment district.
Legacy
Champions.
Oh, Champions Park. Legacy Park. I got stuck on that yesterday.
Single family, yeah.
Okay, so I have a question.
About 5 more minutes.
And we have other parts, let's see, that are more
Let's say they're bringing in commercial or something. You always go with the overlay because they're the most restrictive, right? Typically.
It has more standards, yeah. It has more standards to it.
Okay.
Usually their standard and overlay are more standards, yeah. So the base building is some standards.
Yeah, and you have to follow all of that.
Yes.
So you have to follow the base and the overlay.
Yes,
Okay.
and if the overlay has more, you follow that. Yeah. If there's like same standard, the zoning was only this much, but in the overlay it's more,
You go with the most,
more
more standard.
higher.
We call it more restrictive. I'm so used to that because like that's how you do in when you're doing medical and you're talking about laws and stuff like that. You have to go with the most restrictive law that is there when you're talking about things. And that's even with open writing. Anything that's the most restrictive, that's what you get. So that's how my brain works. But
So, I understand.
I think her biggest, yeah, I think her biggest thing though, I don't remember her name right now. Right. She's worried. And basically put a 20-story multifamily next to her, and she's in that transition zone. Right, and that's what we explained to her already.
This cannot happen.
Right, and that's what I know. We talked to her about it at the FUC, the opening night, the neighborhood one that we did. That's where she's coming from.
Yeah.
And then she's thinking about the district one.
Was a feel.
Is that her name?
Yeah, one with the, yeah, she's,
those hospitals be very careful, like it's almost like you're.
that's why I'm trying to do it.
They have also records, and like amplification and things like that, so. I think that's pretty neat.
I'm gonna make sure that's who that is.
Yeah, I think that's very.
Yeah, Wimbledon, Family Farms,
Okay,
I'm a
great.
fan of
But
No,
she
yeah,
has
yeah,
her
they have,
own,
they're not
her mother's
crying
has
for
another.
Oh, yeah, with Center Park.
I don't think you're lucky.
No, I don't think so. It's
All of that, that 5 around Park Road.
yes, that's who it is.
Okay.
Christina Rumens, that's who it is.
That whole area is prime.
Yeah, she's just worried that we're going to basically, because you know there's Victorian homes and they're trying to do the CNO right now, and they're just worried. She's just worried that we are going to
So did y'all
lose
look
the
at
characters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this one
Did
is
y'all
more
check
industrial.
Strata?
When we put the airport in the middle of February, I know that it was really like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Similar.
And then of course, you know, you don't know.
At least how everybody's.
Right, of course, that's kind of. Look in your eye.
No, one minute. 1 minute, I would say transition.
Medal of Honor Museum. That's gonna be a game changer right there.
Yeah.
And then you got the.
I live in it, it's amazing. You haven't been.
That's an industrial. Yeah.
Southwest, what's it called? Southwest Industrial Park.
That one is.
Even the front.
Well, I mean, when you think
Sold
of
it for like.
history of Arlington, that helped put it on the map.
Yeah.
That was like initially your opportunity. And King better than the park was across the road, and that's where the UTA has to be the zoning thing as well.
unique type of place, I guess. What would you call Front Street? How would you describe that area?
It's like a restaurant row. It's like a. It's a good example.
It's sort of a
want to
small, local, maybe it's the standards for that, small scale, but maybe it's just.
They already have it. It has. Yes. Me and Jay went over most of what we could actually achieve it.
Can you send that to me? I don't know.
This one?
Yeah.
She's not it's in the
Isn't it?
yeah, it's in the
Everybody, I never get like things that says like something's been added, and then I never go and look, and Jay never tells me something.
It doesn't come as a notification.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the meetings, but neighborhood coordination.
Obviously, the lake is a destination, but I would say
This is all
way
they
underutilized. Correct. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I've never been on it.
You wanna look at it?
It's a way underutilized resource or asset. So
They want a front yard setback, 10%. Which front yard, so which one you definitely do in the NBC? Yes. We do that, the front yard entrance to fall out, face the street.
Lots of
Right
those.
now we have that, right? I was like, that's what I said.
You guys probably move on to step 2.
what's step two?
You know, yeah.
Section 2, section. The balance of how it is right now, and then
Looking at the ones you just identified.
and then,
So the shopping mall, how would you improve the type of stuff around
That's the $1 million question, right? One their restaurant.
What are the challenges? The challenges of this project, getting it out of it.
Because we can always say it's encouraged, because we, just like how they are.
Yeah, you can't force them to build with them.
this is one, house issue.
See, that's what I don't understand.
Right now, it's a lot of 40 to 40, and typical people.
Yeah, no, most people's stuff is it's 2 stories, but it's so funny that you choose, oh, we have Victorian homes, stuff like that. Most Victorian homes are 3 or 4 units, or 3 or 4 stories. And I went driving down that, because I think that way actually to go to,
I've been there specifically for
Pitt
restaurants.
Express. And I drive by this house, and there is no Victorian
Now, it's high
homes.
end.
They are all
I would say
craftsman, 50s,
higher end than even the
40s and
Caribbean
50s houses.
restaurants.
So not Victorian, I don't know if she understands that.
One of them, she will know.
So Jay said we can recommend at least 1.5 stories, 36 feet.
And I think why they are worried about that is, suppose somebody just comes to our house, just.
Yeah,
And we didn't get
And then they'll be higher than everybody else.
that,
Duplexes are around 12.
and which is, that's why it's very much.
Oh, that place is so nice.
Like, so that is like too low, so I should have to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, that needs to match together.
So how about,
Maybe if they don't want that kind of thing, they should write the code that way. That,
The garages have to be in the back.
something like
Or like how we do the front yard setback, right? If you can do an average, or you can see which one is, so you can measure the height of the house,
should be more mixed.
the average height,
There's no
which should not
residential,
exceed.
there's no hotel.
You know,
There's no hotel.
so let's say in the area, like
Yeah, that's,
the
yeah, there is
most
no.
height that in that area is 36, 36, and then the least one is 36.
one
You could probably say
hotel.
look up to 36 because somebody has
Underutilized there.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, I would just say, just do something that we're strict with the garage. Because if you're trying to get the characteristics of that area,
centers.
And then you'll have to have lipsticks.
Was it the other planning?
Yeah, I think it's called Alabama. That's where all our zoning.
We definitely need more of a balance. I mean, Green Oaks is pretending to be that.
Takes a while. And then you got final ordinance. Okay, this one, they're only saying
Okay, point out changes. Oh, is that what it is?
it's like, why?
Oh, that's right there, that's
The
daytime
density
population.
side of the lot.
It's an evening population.
So they're trying to keep the lot
In terms
coverage.
of like.
Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes. And lot coverage right now, I think our 12 is
But then if that is how you're built, you want to have that here.
Yeah, a lot of those houses are the smaller size.
That's not what houses are.
Right,
Right?
not the lots, the lots
The
are,
house size
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. It's more, yeah, they're a lot of craftsman looking, smaller bungalows, not bungalows, those smaller sizes.
So she said there are other ways to address building scale and district
There's a couple of 6-story, whatever.
other ways to achieve. Is she going to attend?
Somebody decides to go 10 stories or higher.
Yeah.
I'll be virtual, but Jacob's gonna call me.
I think it's so good, this meeting, you know, we have gotten kind of learn how, when things are, basically it's done, how do you implement it? This is the way.
Building up on 30, that's about it. Maybe
What about, these types of developments, Champions Park and the Highlands?
Mostly encourage development of vacant property in the interior of the
What we
neighborhood.
require the developments to be.
This by multi-family zoning. Oh, this one, Jay said it might take or,
They're making some improvements to that right now.
yes, one is already allowed. And who's going to sign that, like, people, they can fully, everyone has to consent.
You know what?
The person who has that extra unit is not going to consent. You can encourage such like, we cannot add that in the C to say, we're not allowing duplexes, we allow.
Yeah, you can't do it right.
But if they feel so, is she really talks about duplex or? There are If you say encourage, right? Yes. That's fine. Who cares? But it's an encourage. So you know what I said?
Every day was like the day.
That's going to be very hard. We need to understand where they're coming from.
Or high density ownership, way different animal than multifamily.
Not to like rent it out or anything. Even in my case, one of it is right now my house is too big. They don't need to go. But if I
Look at my house is too big, I wanna have that brand guy.
no, if we downside, then I would have an accessory unit just for my somebody comes, yeah. But I'm okay with it. All the things we talked about, like in residential cabinet. Jay said that's what NBC is all about. They are in the same house, it's gonna look like, commercial along Central.
Businesses in with their executives. There's no place for an executive to
Tear
live
down
in
the
a
existing
neighborhood.
We didn't have any comments on that one because we're like, we cannot tell.
Yeah, there's some of that.
Yeah, Meridian is kind of.
So they'll just run away. No, but if they are doing
There's some in
the
Delaware
new
that do
residents
gardens,
based upon these
but
I don't know, because, and this is just me, like downtown Denton, by the university, there's a lot of houses that were turned into restaurants. And I'm like,
All right. So we're going to wrap up. I realize even with the extended time we created, that was pretty rapid fire. So our plan will be to scan or photograph all the group's work, and we'll share it out to the steering committee. And we invite you all to provide additional comments to us once you see that. So if you think about this, have additional ideas. We can also hang out for a little bit after the meeting, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So, John, before you sneak away, I think there's a couple of next steps that you want to cover before we close the meeting.
All right, while everyone's taking their seats, comprehensive plan workshops, we had our first one, it was great. We're gonna make just actually some improvements, but what we had was great. So it was a good kind of step into that workshop as we do 5 more across all of the 5 council districts starting next Monday. But I will reshare the informational flyer. Please, please, please. First day 1, we kind of said, y'all are the advocates for the comprehensive plan, making sure that people are engaging and understanding what we're doing here. So I really do encourage y'all to share where and when you can about these events. If you would like to attend any of them, please let me know. We'd be happy to provide you any speaking opportunity that you'd like to have, just to share with residents your experience so far. But it's also a good time to just chat with anyone that may be there as to what their thoughts are. So, and then we have our community survey out right now. We're almost at 190, close to 200. We're getting there. It's been out since last Friday. It will be there until the end of April. You'll see that shared on the city's webpage, newsletters, emails, social media. So we really want to try to make sure that we're getting as much feedback as possible, because this is going to really be helpful as we continue to talk more about place types, as well as just the comprehensive plan in general. So we're going to be doing a lot of work over the next couple of months, specifically analyzing all of the data and feedback that we're gathering over these next 3 weeks. So the consultants will be back in June. And then July, we're actually going to have the Growing Better Places board game. So we'll have more information on that to come back with y'all. We have that calendar. There are 2 dates that we can meet. Staff and the consultants do not necessarily have any materials that we would need to go over for the April and May meeting. Yes? Oh, we will have the logos ready for April. Or we can quickly discuss those in June, but I want to open it up to y'all just to make sure, do we need to have a meeting in April or May? Or are you comfortable with coming back in June with the consultants? We'll talk about the logo and what we've learned from the community, but want to make sure that I get direction from y'all on what you would like to do.
I would think that we want to be as productive as possible, and we're still at the learning stage, and certainly staff and the consultants are compiling all of this information. And what I would suggest is that we come back when they've had a chance to digest all of this data and input, and that staff has done that as well. And that way we can really go to work. So I would be okay if we took a couple of months off until we're ready for them. Now, if the group thinks we want to meet and I love today, it was wonderful. I wish could get the feedback from what everybody had done. So that would be, if y'all wanted to do that, we could have another meeting. But if we want to push it and have our next meeting in June, I'm okay with that if the group thinks that's wise for us to do.
Taylor Oldred, question. I'm all in favor of, not meeting just to meet, but what about a bus tour with some of the city staff? We show these maps, but could we hit the road together in a city bus or whatever and look at some of these things? I know the chamber has organized a bus tour with Trey before, and I don't know, it might be beneficial for us to go out and see some of the sites and stuff. It's been a hot minute since I've been to some areas of the town and stuff, so maybe one of these days, we're not meeting here, but we're just out and about, a little field trip.
I think that's an okay idea. I know a guy who's got an antique fire truck we could probably all go on. Yes. Any other suggestions or comments on that? That may be something we could actually look at doing. We've got a tour bus company here, Dan Diaper. We might could get him to give us a deal or donate or something. I don't know.
If I may, on that, it's very difficult because if we have a quorum, it's a moving meeting, and we have to, on an agenda, have every single place that we're going to be at because the public needs to be able to attend every single meeting space. So that could be a little challenging. Something we can do, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, we have identified a lot of areas on these maps, and it could be that maybe in the month of May, we work as staff to kind of identify some meeting spaces that we can do a walking tour at some of these locations. We can provide you with the agenda of where that would be, and then we kind of just meet there at that space and talk about it. But the bus tour can be difficult because we would have a moving public meeting.
I don't see the attorney's office here. Let's decide, hurry.
I know.
As soon as we say that, we'll have this time.
You might want to talk with the people at the Clean Temple Metropolitan Planning Organization. I think they still do it every year. They do a mobile, and they're a public meeting, they do a bus tour, a mobile workshop of seeing the different roadway projects they have to consider. I think there's ways to do it.
Okay. Would probably be a May thing, just to make sure we get all the logistics handled.
So do we have to decide at this meeting if we're going to meet in May? Or should we go ahead and
Let me
meet
email.
for June?
Let me get with legal and get their advice from the city's legal team for their standpoint on how they would like for an appointed group to proceed with that type of meeting, and I will get back with y'all.
Okay, is there any other business that we have? Yes.
I'd just like to comment the March 26th meeting at the Active Center will be a fun-filled day because that's the same day as the grand opening
Yes.
of that center at 2 o'clock. So it's going to be a action-packed day at the Active
Yeah,
Center.
it's a
So,
beautiful facility. We were there on Monday, so 2 o'clock next
Right.
Wednesday, the Active Center will have a grand opening, and then we will have our workshop at 5:30. So
and it's also the 100th park for Arlington, celebrating the 100th year of parks. So
yeah,
Well, John, are we meeting in April? It is Holy Week. if we're gonna miss a meeting, I think, the April meeting, April would be the great time to miss.
Yeah, yeah.
I do. Ms. Henderson?
It is Holy Week for Easter.
I wanted to find out if we attend the meetings, do we need to let you know that we're going to be at a meeting? The public meetings?
It would be good. We have posted possible quorum notices for all of the meetings, so it's not a worry that we will have a quorum. You may attend any that you would like freely. But if you want to have kind of maybe a speaking moment, or I can make sure that your badge is there if you'd like to wear that. If not, you may just come as a resident. No pressure. Yes. Yes. So that's a good point. On their opening day, it's free to anyone to come in and look. It's not 50 plus only. It's actually open to all Arlington residents to come check it out.
Mr. Chairman, real quick. I heard a whole bunch of things, and Bruce brought up a real good point about April, and there's a lot of people that may or may not be able to attend on that Thursday. What if we don't do April but do May, so we don't go 3 months without a meeting and then go from there? I'm just tossing that out there.
I'm fine with that.
Skip
that work?
April, and then I'll send you more information about from the legal office as to what they'll say about May.
Okay.
In terms of a traveling meeting that we can go check out some of these place types and areas before we talk more about the place types and public engagement analysis.
So for the May meeting, perhaps we could look at, each group didn't get to communicate with the rest of the group about their ideas. I would really like to continue that. So if May's meeting has to be here, which it can be, I would suggest that we pick up, I know we won't have the consultants, but if we could pick up where we left off, that might be helpful for us. Okay, all agree? Okay, very good. If there's no other business, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting now, and it is 7:39.